Oh, hello. Welcome back to the Musings of Modern Mystics. I'm Lorelei Hewitt, and I'm here with Mary Lee LaBay. We are going to talk again about past life regression. Facebook Live seems to be doing some discouraging or challenging things about saving live videos. So please wait and share this after it has been completely posted, after it has been complete, because I think that might be where things are getting deleted. So now with that, let's get back to some of the juicy stuff. The first half an hour was a lot of fun.
It was great.
It was really cool. So
Sorry you missed it.
Yeah, we want to do this again because it's a really important topic to me. The evolution of the soul, the human soul, is it's important and it's relevant. And knowing the story of our soul's regression, our soul's journey, progression, through eternity,
right,
is really helpful. One of the things I've noticed with people is that many of us seem to embody a kind of archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And that archetype, I think, is something that we've developed over many lifetimes. Like my husband, Paul, I see him as being a champion.
Uh-huh.
Not a King Arthur, but a Sir Lancelot.
Mm-hmm. A hero.
Yes, a hero, yeah. And he works best that way. He loves to come in. He's always saving me from, technological mayhap.
Technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that.
Yes. But I guess my question to you, Mary Lee, is, do you see that? And is that one of the things that you see is helpful for people to know? Is, what kind of person they are in that complex, soulful level, understanding the stories that wind through their life.
I think it's amazingly helpful, certainly to understand your purpose. But as we talked about earlier, there are what we call hub lifetimes, and to kind of set the scene for that, my vision, the map is never the journey, but my vision of it is that the soul is like a diamond. So each of us is like a complete diamond with just an infinite number of aspects or facets that are on there, and each facet represents a lifetime, to set the scene a little bit. And so if you use that model as a metaphor for the soul, we're living on one aspect. So this lifetime is really what we perceive and what we deal with, our daily issues and challenges and opportunities. But the more that we do our past life regression, the more that we open up ourselves to remembering these other facets that make up who we are, the more, obviously, the more power, the more energy is in our system, the more we can connect with the wisdom, the talents, the gifts, the energy of those other lifetimes, the more that we can heal maybe traumas that we've had in these other lifetimes. And so with that model, as we talk about the hero or the archetypes of who we are, I use a word that I've learned within the past life system, what we call a hub. And so an archetype might relate to that in some ways. I know we talk about archetypes, the warrior, the king, the priest, or whatever, and we talk about these archetypes, but and it certainly is an overlay, or it correlates to that. And so within our own system, we may have hub lifetimes where that particular lifetime is the spearhead of maybe thousands of other lifetimes that you've had. And you may have one in your whole system, or you may have several. It's better to kind of coordinate them and not have too many. I've identified 3 in my soul system, 3 different hubs that I have. So I could relate to 3 different archetypes.
Okay.
Okay, so that each one of those would, then, have a system of spokes of lifetimes that are supporting that hub. And so, your question about knowing what that is, it's extremely valuable. Number one, it can be inspiring. So if Paul, wakes up in the morning and thinks, well, I'm a warrior, or what did we call him, a hero, then, you're addressing the day's challenges and the day's issues from the perspective of a hero instead of just waking up and, I got to get on with my day and having a different attitude. So, part of it is really motivational, but it also, addresses how are we supporting our purpose in life? What are we doing to really further that, when we were created at the beginning of time and space, we were created with a purpose. And, and in many lifetimes, we probably just don't do it at all. And from the numbers of people that come into my office that have no clue about their purpose, I would imagine there's a lot of people out there that really don't know. And hopefully, if you're listening to this program, you're probably searching really strongly, what is my purpose so I can get on with it and I can get myself lined up. But so doing the past lives is a very important way to even really hone in on what your purpose is and discovering those hubs, those archetypes.
So, you're talking, what is occurring to me is the difference between a purpose and an imprint. And are we created, and I don't know the answer to this, but when we're created, are we created with a kind of soulful imprint about our aptitudes and who we are? Because I see people that are the adventurers. It's like the Enneagram is an example of that cosmology. That I guess it does put us into places, to segments, and puts us into like an astrological or I'm sorry, I'm struggling for the word here. Stereotype.
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 Or archetype.
Or archetype.
That characteristic of who we are.
Right. But I've often wondered, are some of us just born to be who we are? Like mystics, for example, is something that I think about, like who I am. I'm a mystic. I'm someone who has a passion and an aptitude combined together for a certain kind of practice.
Right.
Through meditation and healing arts and things like that, I tend to practice that. And to do anything other than that, it just feels inauthentic. It feels, I was a computer programmer for a while, and it felt inauthentic.
Right, and so many people are living that way.
Yes.
I just have to make money. I can't be an artist or, that inauthentic.
That inauthentic life. Yes. So I don't know. I've often wondered, like, are we created a certain way? Or is this something that through many, many lifetimes we have just sort of gone down a path that has led us to experience certain things over and over and over again until it becomes an imprint? I guess. Wait, I'm sorry. I know you want to say. I know. And I don't know that we know the answer to this for sure. But were we created this way? Or did we create ourselves that way? And yes,
it's a twist there
because
we did create ourselves that way.
Yeah.
But because of we really don't know what happened at the beginning. But let's just say it was all oneness. Like it was one big cloud of consciousness, and then it broke up into pieces,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a fairly common paradigm, but
Yes.
I'm not saying that we know that for fact, but let's just use that as an example. Well, when it breaks up, those little fragments have certain characteristics to them, right? Mm-hmm. If you broke up an apple, some of them would be seeds and some would be skin and some would be mm-hmm. flesh and some would be stem or whatever, just as a really terrible example.
Well, no, it's not. Actually, I love, because does the apple seed, when it is planted and it's a new tree, is it the same tree that the seed came from, or is it a new tree? That's like our lifetimes.
Right.
That is
right.
that.
And
it is.
So it evolves. But, and so different pieces are going to have different things. So some people, got really incredible creative parts of that fragment, and others were, determined heroes and warriors, and others were, just whatever the various things could be. And then over lifetimes, we're continuing in the different experiences that either further it or block it. Again, I talk to many, many, many people where they know that their soul yearning is to do the things that you're doing, mm-hmm. To be involved in spiritual practices and to be the mystic and all of that. But they stay in that corporate job, mm-hmm. Or they've been executed and persecuted mm-hmm. enough that they're terrified to be able to live out their purpose in life. So, or imagine if you were a warrior archetype, and then you have to keep going to these wars and having those experiences. It either strengthens you and makes you brave and determined to do that, or it may really block you. It's just like, well, that never ends well.
Yes. I don't know for sure, and I don't know that you do either.
Right.
It's like how much of it is really programmed into us, or
I think that there is a seed of that is there. There are people that would never, like, for me, I don't think I would ever really be a warrior. I've lived through wars. I've participated in those sorts of things, but I usually have a different role than somebody who would be the knight in shining armor. They mm-hmm. would have a different role. That isn't my character. Yeah. And so even though I might participate in a war, mm-hmm. Just like all of our country did in World War II, for mm-hmm. instance, everybody participated in their own way, whether they were building airplanes or they were, on the front lines. But yeah, I think there is that tendency, somebody that has just this incredible creativity is going to be different than that. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And the other thing that we talked about earlier that I love, this is a new idea, about the hub life, that core, that archetype, that imprint, whether we created that imprint or that was created in us by a creator, I don't know, but it's there. Being able to understand that and see, I love this, the fascinating facets mm-hmm. of that diamond mind that is all those other lifetimes, that this lifetime may actually be there embodied to support and to enrich and grow that archetype, that role, mm-hmm. to add a complexity to that, a depth to that, mm-hmm. and to be able to understand that. So maybe this lifetime you're not the hero per se. You're not Sir Lancelot making history with your championship qualities, but you're learning skills that feed into that. Mm-hmm.
Well, and then where the glitch comes in that we have to be careful about, and we didn't talk about this earlier, is when you are a part of that hub, maybe you're a spoke on that hub, mm-hmm. and that's your purpose is to support that, but then you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So then, if you think of your own soul and you have that hub and then you have the spokes, and all these spokes are really, following the lead of that hub and supporting and getting the extra experience mm-hmm. and everything. but then there's some that are just, I'm going to stay small. I'm going to hide over here. I'm going to just go make a lot of money instead of doing my purpose. Or not that you can't make money and purpose at the same time. I totally think that's true. But sometimes, instead of being an artist, I'm just going to go and work and be miserable in corporate America or whatever. So a lot of times they're acting counter to what they need to do in order to support. And therefore, it makes it harder and harder for that soul to progress in that direction towards that purpose.
Yeah.
So learning who, if you're the hub, and we talked about this earlier, that may not be the ideal thing. It's like, oh yeah, I want that empowerment. I want to feel like I'm the center of these incarnations. But on the other hand, if you're not the one that's really determining the purpose and marching very quickly and directly towards achieving your goal and your purpose, then you're going to look and say, is this the best it is? Maybe I hope there's another aspect of me that's actually directing me and guiding me, and maybe it would be good to, it would be nice to know that there's one that's even more powerful within my soul.
Well, have you done, in my work, which is more shamanic, it's not hypnotherapy, so I'm not necessarily, sometimes I'm talking to people about these kinds of things, but there are stories that we dive into, that we see, and when changes are made in this present real time storyline, you can feel them ripple throughout time and space, and you feel like you're changing time, like changing history, changing the story, the energy around things. It's really cool stuff.
We do some of that in the past life regression. We have to be really careful because you have to be really careful about changing time and some of those experiences. And some of the rough experiences are so good for us, for propelling us forward in our learning, in our lessons, that you don't really want to change some of those experiences. But we can certainly go back very delicately and make some changes. And what we're really doing is we're changing ourselves on the aspect field. So sometimes we're only changing how we perceive it, which is good. Right. It's very healthy to just perceive the event differently and integrate it in a way that's healthy for us, instead of maintaining the PTSD and the trauma and the drama around it, or the anger and the negative emotions. But sometimes we're actually going in and changing the events that occurred in that lifetime. I've done that in my lifetime enough.
Yeah.
That,
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little disorienting, because I started doing past life regression on myself about 35 years ago, and I remembered, many, many, many dozens of lives. And then I've also done a lot of spiritual work and a lot of shifting of aspects, and some of them have been so dramatic that when I go back into remembering those previous lifetimes, either I'm not there anymore, or the events have changed. Yeah, so you can make enough shift in your soul where, some really significant changes. Now I have to go back and go, I think I was in that lifetime, but I got to go check again, because things may have changed, and they will.
Much. Yeah. So there's something in the shamanic practice, we call it curse unraveling.
Oh.
And it is the art of going back to when your energy became knotted up, because for the way I see it, you were in the previous show, if any of you saw that one live, it didn't get recorded, but you were describing your image of the soul as being a luminescent,
a prism.
A prism, yes.
A prism.
So what I see is, I see light, but then I see all these lines of connection, and sometimes there are knots, and those knots get sort of unwound and unbound. And sometimes a person or an event can imprint on us so strongly that it affects, that's right, you would call the shape of the soul. Like it can create a dent or a bump, or and I consider it a knot.
Fingerprints and mud on that prism.
Yes, that's right.
So we can't shine as brightly because it's all gunked up with things that have happened.
So we will go in and unbind our clients or ourselves to that kind of that kind of curse, which is not. It's not necessarily
a real curse. It's more of it's their own internal perspective of what has happened and how they've integrated it.
It can be, but it can also be in another lifetime where you were really cursed.
Well,
you'll see that, right?
Be, yeah.
Yes. So, do you ever go back? Do you take people back and like undo curses and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, if that's what we observe having happened in these other lifetimes, but we certainly go back into events and experiences that they had that can create that kind of trauma, and that might be showing up in this lifetime as a disease or an illness or a chronic pain.
Oh, wow.
For instance, and this is a new topic we didn't talk about earlier. For instance, the work that I've done with people who have fibromyalgia, which is kind of a moving pain that travels around the body. And what will happen is when they come into the office, we'll focus on wherever the pain is at that moment. And when we go in there, we usually find 2 or 3 lifetimes where there have been injuries or trauma. Something has happened. And so we resolve the trauma in those other lifetimes, and the pain goes away. And then it moves, and now it's flaring up over here. And so we just follow the pain patterns, and we go into the past lives. And I've had people come away and say, I don't have pain in those areas anymore. Wow,
that's so beautiful.
And the medical community's not seeing that because they're not going to go there.
No.
They're not going to go there. But I've had several fibromyalgia clients who we've been able to resolve that. And this is anecdotal. I mean, I'm not saying this is the only cause of fibromyalgia or anything, but what I've seen in my office, it has been very successful.
That is so cool. Yeah, see, in my practice, we would call that curse unraveling.
Okay, curse unraveling.
I know. It's just a
fancy term.
It's a fancy term. Yeah, it's just what I was taught. But it's so much fun to see how different people will describe and do similar work, but we describe it differently.
There's a crossover between the different
use slightly different
modalities,
language. And we'll have slightly different ways of doing that, but it's still similar. It's so cool.
And the end goal is the same.
Yes, and this kind of thing, you call it hypnotherapy, but really, this kind of practice has gone on for thousands of years.
Yeah, the trance states.
And the trance states, they're so powerful in transforming reality. When you take non-ordinary reality, you dive down into those beautiful altered states of awareness.
Juicy.
It is juicy. It's
very
so cool.
juicy.
It's ecstatic. But you can change things. You shift things from that non-ordinary reality perspective, and you come back, and then the physical reality is changed. You're changed. Have you ever had anybody even look different after they come back from sessions? That is so cool.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yep.
Well, and another thing that we do, there's a technique that I use in my office when somebody's having an issue with another person, say a spouse or a boss or, whoever is in their life, but there's a problem in communication or personalities, and we're able to access and create a conversation between the client and the other person. We do it very, very respectfully and very delicately because we really, it is showing up that we're actually having a real conversation, and the results of that have been amazing. people coming back later and saying the very next day that person at the office was totally behaving differently.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, or I went home and my spouse brought up the subject instead of me having to, and it got resolved. And amazing, when that started happening in my office, I thought, okay, we've got to pay attention to this. And so we've really developed that as a very useful and productive way of dealing with relationship issues now. It doesn't really involve past lives, although we can set up the same kind of communication between the client and their past life person and share wisdom and talent and experiences. I do have a story to tell.
Yes, please do.
Because we did last time.
Okay, yeah.
And one that just came to mind for me. I had a client a few years ago. In her lifetime, in this life, she and her husband had an herbology kind of business, probably distribution, like bulk, with tea and essences and herbs, and totally connected to the garden and the plants and everything. Yeah. And she came into my office to do a regression, and it was so powerful in that lifetime. And when you're doing the regression, you're actually stepping into the body and experiencing the perspective, the knowledge, everything that they're experiencing in that lifetime. And she went out, she lived in a really lush, almost kind of jungle-like place. And she went outside and she could just clearly communicate with each plant. And she could hear them saying, pick me, I'm ready, or not me yet, or, for a certain thing, because she was a healer in that lifetime.
Okay.
And it was just, it all came alive for her. And she's been able to practice that now in her garden at home here in the 21st century, because you can go back and you can learn those techniques, or, just regain the memory of things that you have acquired in other lifetimes, instead of just letting it go. Well, it's a new life, I get to start over again. Why not go back and collect up that information?
So, past life therapy can be used to understand your soul's evolution. It can be used to bring back power, knowledge, strengths that you have acquired in other lifetimes that you probably have a little bit of an inkling of in this lifetime, but now you can really pull it forward or backward or whatever. Time is a weird concept for me. And it sounds like you can also heal things. Have we talked about that in this show?
Yes.
Yeah. You can heal traumas that have occurred. And your point is like what?
I have two more examples.
Oh, I want to hear. I love stories. Okay.
One topic we brought up in the previous incarnation of this show was didn't we talk about transgender? And I do have a client that I have a client who knows somebody, that we've talked about, but in each of that person's incarnation, they have been, I guess what you would call transgender, or a gender identification that is not necessarily acceptable in society, or it's outside the norm.
Okay.
And and so in trying to understand why was that happening now, it has gone back for thousands of years.
Wow.
That person has chosen that, and somehow, I would imagine, we haven't gotten back far enough, but I would imagine that the origin of that soul might have been in a place where that was the norm, and so they are continuing to express that in their incarnations.
Interesting.
The other little story I wanted to tell you was one that I did, a regression I did, probably 20 some years ago when I was really starting out. And this mother had purchased a regression for Christmas for each of her children. I thought, what a cool mom.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the son came into my office, and he was 19 at the time, right? And the mother, in this case, he was there, and the mother was sitting with me on the couch, and then he was in a chair doing the regression. And his opening scene, he goes, oh, and he's in all this pain, and he's just like, like this. And I said, what is going on? And he said, I'm a squaw, that was,
Okay. Yeah.
PC then, but
Yeah.
I'm a Native American woman. And he said, I'm squatting in the teepee, I'm squatting over this dirt floor, and I'm delivering a baby.
Wow.
Here's a 19-year-old boy.
Wow.
And he is having all of the delivery pains, and he is
Wow.
birthing a child.
Oh,
And
wow.
And I said, and so what is
Okay.
that like? I
Yeah.
gave him about a minute of that. I thought,
Uh-huh.
How many men
Get to experience
actually
labor
know
pains.
what it feels like, right? And so I let him experience enough of it, and then I said, okay, let's move ahead to when that is finished and you're feeling good again. So we moved him past it. But for about a minute, he got to feel labor pains.
Wow.
And so afterwards we were talking, and I said, well, you'll probably have a different view about your mother now. And when someday you're going to get married and you'll, perhaps have children.
Yeah.
You will be the only man on the planet who has first person experience about what your wife is going through in
That's
that
so
moment.
cool. Yeah.
And so these are the kinds of things that we can bring into our conscious awareness in this lifetime, experiences that would have been normally outside the possibility for us. Isn't that cool?
So cool.
Yeah.
That is so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've successfully recorded another half-hour show.
Wonderful.
Hopefully this one actually stays. I think it will. I do believe it will.
Fingers crossed.
But tell us, before we go,
Okay.
before we log off, your classes coming up.
I have classes.
This is really cool stuff. If you
so much fun.
have any curiosity at all about your soul's evolution, if you want to heal trauma that you keep bumping your head up against over and over in this lifetime, if you
want to know your purpose,
if you want to know your soul's purpose, contact Mary Lee LaBay, because this is really powerful, useful, cool stuff. It'll be life-changing.
So they can go to maryleelabay.com,
Okay.
MaryLeelabay.com. My schedule is there. There's a lot of information, blog posts, tons of stuff. And then also I have a hypnotherapy training at Bastyr University coming up 3 weekends in June. I will be at East West Books giving a past life talk on June 24th. I'm pretty sure it's in the evening.
Okay.
And then I have a past life and what I call spiritual exploration professional training in August, the 2nd through the 6th.
Okay.
So you can learn about all of these different techniques. But I would love to communicate with you if you want to talk, or if you want to set up a phone call with me. I'd be happy to discuss any of these things with any of you. Thanks for listening today.
Thank you very much for tuning in again, and thank you for doing this again.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully this works this time. I think it will. All right. And on Monday, Meredith and I are going to be discussing the astrology of sex, signs, and the zodiac. So you'll have to tune in on Monday for that one. It's going to be, it'll be
exciting
juicy.
show.
Yeah.
Another juicy show.
Yes. All right. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing day.